Willkommen, welcome once again to another part of our property podcasting portfolio. There we go. Lovely bit of alliteration. Hang on to your hats, indeed. Welcome to the show. Hamish McClare of Surgical Bay, who helped me set it up in the first place, and Silas J. Lees of WikiWound, friend of the show and a sage gentleman, to say the least. We were talking in the green room about today's topic, and today's topic is, in fact, warm homes, reform, or is it just political spend? Hamish, would you care to start us off, please?
Well, you did actually suggest it could be political spin.
I didn't say that.
This will be a completely different introduction today. We'll let Silas speak about the content. But what I'd like to compare our present situation, because it becomes ever popular on television these days. Imagine we have a darts player, and this darts player is saying to you, I am just it. I'm going to get to this board. The number of 180s I'm going to throw is just absolutely staggering. You are not going to believe what I'm going to do. You've got the real adult now throwing darts. I'm just going to show you how to do it. Okay. So off he goes with his first dart. And I don't know anything. I've tried playing. I'm bloody hopeless. But anyway, he throws his first dart. And the poor darn thing, sometimes you throw a dart, you think, wow, it's going. And it just falls out of the board. You think, oh, sugar. So no score. So they come in with that. The next challenge is they throw the next one. And those nice little bits of wire. Every now and again, you throw a dart. And instead of going to the right of the wire, it goes to the left. You get a double one or a triple one instead of that triple 20. And this situation we have at the moment with all this change, and when we have something like this, wouldn't it be amazing if we could just have the achievement? They're speaking about 15 billion to create sort of warm homes. Where's that actually going to go? And where they're going to get the money from, for starters? But are we not just sort of speaking about something that looks a little bit sort of pie in the sky?
I am starving, and the very mention of pie, of course, set me off. Silas, if warm homes are a political spend, at least it's one investment where the return isn't just hot air, eh?
A great parallel, Gareth. And let's be honest, the whole idea of having warm homes and having government contribution to homeowners to allow them to spend the significant sums that's necessary to improve the quality of their housing is a very good thing. Let me put that on the table first of all. What I'm not convinced about, as Hamish has raised questions around where's the money coming from, etc., is the political motivation behind why this is actually the case. And I believe that this ties back to this whole net zero agenda, which I'm not convinced is sensible in any way. I think we're putting the British economy at risk for a utopian dream that is being fast outpaced by orders of magnitude by just one country, which is China. And so I think the outcome is worthy. I think the motivation is questionable.
So hang on, are you saying that the effort is pointless because we're always going to be trounced by the great vast new seams of coal in China being mined and burned?
I think it comes down to the political play that is going on, where we're being sold this idea that, for example, renewable energy is cheaper than fossil fuel energy. And that fundamentally is not true. The thing that many people overlook is the fact that if you have 30% of renewable energy being pumped into the system, the fact is when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine, we still need 100% backup of our energy needs. And so it doesn't really negate coal-fired power stations, nuclear or gas. It actually is a supplement, so it's an additional cost. And what many people have found is that their energy costs are actually going up on a daily basis. Now, somebody I was listening to who's looked into this, got a lot more knowledge than I have, has suggested that hidden within the cost of renewable energy is the replacement value over time. So you have this spike in energy costs, which we're all experiencing, and we've got the highest energy costs, or some of the highest energy costs in the world.
Good Lord,
Yes, we want more energy efficient properties. That goes without question. We all want to save money on our bills, but why are we being forced into this situation of having incredibly high bills in the first place, which robs us of the disposable income that we would need to invest in these technologies? And that's my big question. And if I can go back 27 years, when I was doing my dissertation for my degree, I actually looked into modular building and renewable energy as a cause to actually solve some of the housing crises. And I actually felt that we could be designing houses with great big roofs that just serve as solar panels, and we could build in wind turbines and all this sort of stuff. And fundamentally, the technology still, nearly 30 years later, I don't think is there to warrant the investment. And that's the biggest cause for concern.
It's nuts. A warm air policy, at least there's one policy that people can feel. Hey, Hamish.
Well, yes. I mean, one thing we can actually guarantee, the climate is getting warmer, but that's the climate that's getting warmer. It's not necessarily us that's impact. If you consider less than 1% to be an impact.
Well, it seems that the political climate is getting warmer as well.
Well, this is the sad thing. I think the political climate is warming the air up much more than the actual climate itself is happening. I think we're saddened by the fact that here we are buying stuff in from the Norwegians, who are extracting gas from right next door to where we could be extracting it from ourselves, instead of having to buy it from them. But because of various decisions made, and very, very wrong decisions by the Conservative government, I might add, to actually sort of bring this in. However, I'm sure if certain aspects of the current government have their way, they'll be doing more and more damage, which will need to be undone. I mean, there are several things we need to look at. First of all, electric cars are uneconomic. They are a fantastic idea. Unfortunately, they're uneconomic. They put a demand on the energy that's required in the house. And we're putting more and more demand on whether it be solar energy, which can't actually cope with what we need anyway, or any of this other energy that we are actually importing from Europe. So electric cars, the cars themselves, the sales have gone down. They're no longer popular. They're seriously expensive to repair. So people aren't buying them. The Chinese have come up with the most effective, if you like, the cheapest variety. Yep. And of course, that competition is taken away from what's going on. Now, this is all important because what we're speaking about relative to these warm houses is energy, and how we handle the energy is a very, very important sort of aspect. So when you consider that, when you consider the hellish ramp up that we've got, do you like my technical terms, in energy consumption?
Well, at least a hellish ramp up might mean cheaper energy.
But what's happening, the demand of AI from everybody now. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how many millions of words of mine would have gone into AI, never mind the words that have come back over the period of just this last couple of years. And it's actually sort of increasing. That's a bigger demand because and all of this has got to be held somewhere on computers and all the rest of it. It's taking more and more energy to drive computers, which each individual is almost immeasurable compared to the national grid. But you add the multi-million number of users that are starting to use this particular sort of form of technology as well. And as going back to what Silas said in the first place, wouldn't it be great? But we have housing, and we know full well from the work that we've done on sort of safety, the work that we've done on cladding matters, that so many houses have been built with inferior quality materials to enable them to be fully energy efficient. And from that particular perspective, the cost of making those buildings energy efficient without actually putting anything actually in there, without changing the source of fuel and all the rest of it, is impossible. We couldn't achieve it. We can't afford to do it. We can't afford the cladding. We can't afford to repair the cladding. We can't afford to repair the sort of compartmentalization inside these buildings. How are we going to be able to sort of put? Well, we probably could, like the councils. This is what the councils are doing. They're doing some extremely interesting work at the moment in trying to improve the conveyancing process. They've picked on 7 councils who are handling it, everything absolutely so effectively. But they're spending time and money investigating those rather than spending the time and the money investigating ones where there are difficulties. And this is the challenge when you look at something like this. In a perfect world, wouldn't it go together beautifully? However, it's not that simple.
No, great. Silas, at least this investment might raise room temperatures and, in fact, building standards, 2 things that UK housing's been rather short of.
I think you're right, Gareth. I mean, there is, what we have to understand is that man's desire to have control over the environment is what prompts us to, invest in these technologies. So, for example, we could all wear 3 or 4 sweaters around the house during November if we wanted to, and switch off air heating altogether. But that's not really what human beings want to do. So, a lot of this has to be designed around convenience, and as we've touched on, it has to be profitable spend. What I've seen with a lot of these schemes is that they're very hard to get into. So with government money is made available. I think the last one was the Green Energy Scheme or words to that effect. Very, very difficult to get into. And then, of course, you have the, how do I choose the words correctly, the cowboys that manipulate the system and make it difficult for everybody else to then take advantage of government money being put up for grants and that sort of thing for people to improve housing. So I don't quite know what the answer is. I think the energy efficiency is always good to pursue. Warm insulation is always good to pursue. More efficient heating systems. But there's the front end element of this, which I think is grossly being overlooked. And that's where the energy, pardon the expression, needs to be directed to look at where is our energy needs coming from? Why is it coming in from abroad? When we could be producing exactly the same thing in this country. Oh, it's to offset our emissions so that we don't look so bad on paper to the rest of the world. Is that really logical?
I think maybe our efforts should be spent on better insulation rather than new ways in which we can spend more money while we generate less.
And again, that's a great point, Gareth. But I'll go back to a few years ago now. There were many companies that were set up that were filling cavity walls within properties with insulation.
Yes, I remember. Yes.
Yeah, and the unfortunate part about it was that a lot of these installations were not done particularly well, and so the problem was it led to a degradation of the building fabric. Because moisture was being trapped within the wall and not being allowed to drain away. So a consumer had committed thousands of pounds in terms of trying to insulate their property and make it better, then ended up with defects that they couldn't rectify. And that's the challenge of retrofitting insulation into our housing stock, particularly when you consider in Britain we've got some of the oldest houses in the world. You've got a black and white timber frame property, Grade 2 listed, very difficult to insulate, and it's going to be drafty as hell. The modern stuff that's coming through now, very airtight, but is that good for the human condition?
No.
I was brought up to believe that buildings should breathe. We should have ventilation in a lot of ways, and so that does create a higher demand for heating. And again, the argument comes full circle.
My wife told me recently that because she was a farm girl, she was brought up by her father, who was a chief dairy herdsman, that they should burp their house several times a week just to make sure that the air moves around. Hamish, it seems to me that focus is perhaps in the wrong direction. Is this reform or just political spending? I mean, it slashes bills and cuts carbon. Do we call it genius?
I think, sadly, there's a lot of spin contained in this, but as Silas did indicate, there's a lot of, and I think this was the same thing as I was speaking about the dart player. He had tremendous intent as he approached that dartboard. Our government had tremendous intent, and a lot of people who investigate there's tons of areas how we can improve things. They have great intent.
No, not at all. I'm going to pass back over to Silas. I think there's a slight issue that Hamish is dealing with. Silas, beyond all this hot air, but beyond all this invective, beyond all this spin, is there a point to this we should take away? Are they, in fact, working for us, or are they still working just for them?
Well, a government, unfortunately, I think are fallible to the human condition, which is invariably we will always put ourselves first. And the unfortunate part about this is I think we need a radical look at the housing stock, and that starts from everything to do with planning, and that's to do with the regulations and ensuring that properties are built according to code.
Right.
Very often, as we've seen, corners are being cut. That has an impact on the consumer, who ultimately is the one investing hundreds of thousands, if not millions of pounds into their place of residence. And if those corners are being cut by the developers, well, perhaps that's where we need to look. But in fairness to them, costs of everything have gone up. So I understand there's an economics, there's commercial models here, and this is why it's, when you start looking at it, it's not quite as easy to unpick as we would like to believe. But it does come down, I think, again, to leadership. It does come down to honesty from the developer's point of view, building good quality homes that are sound, energy efficient, and over time, the renewal of the housing stock is the worthwhile goal that we're pursuing. Ultimately, retrofitting to 1930s solid wall construction homes is going to be a lot more difficult without substantial investment. And I think it comes back to that argument: is it warranted? I'm struggling to say that it is.
Hamish, before we close out, it just seems to me that although there's some honourable intentions here, I get that, but the problem we've got is we take off, and we talk about this often on Cladding Matters, we take off those beautiful skirts, and underneath it we find the petticoats are filthy. It's the point is that taking off this cladding is only exposing the malpractices and the lack of effort put in to create homes that are insulated and fit for living in.
I think the sad aspect is sort of continue on from that and just sort of wind up what we're speaking about. And it goes back to Silas was speaking about when he effectively was sort of putting together ideas relative to new builds and the quality of those new builds when he did his study. Now, they haven't introduced that methodology. We've actually sort of found that those cheaper ways, those cheaper aspects of manufacture have not been taken on board. We've invested our money elsewhere. We know for a fact that the closed down, I believe it's 2 factories which have closed. The third one is likely to actually sort of close down as well, which was helping to sort of manufacture the sort of prefabricated sort of type of building materials that it
seemed like a no-brainer, that methodology, right?
But we've lost that at this moment in time. So we're not putting those ideas into practice. I do believe that we have the right intent, and it would be good if we could make sure that as we build these new houses, which surely we must do and we will get round to doing, but not in the time frame our government intended, is to make sure that we put them in a situation that they are compartmentalized in such a way they're built, that the fabric that we're actually using to build whatever materials we're putting into them are those which are going to be beneficial. Breeze blocks were called breeze blocks for a good reason, because there was some aspects sort of to them. They weren't that tight material that sort of bricks were sort of made of. So but they've sort of fallen out of favor now in terms of other sort of methodology. But I do think if we can get it right, let's get the houses we're building, these new houses we're building, right. We have to repair. There are some seriously dangerous properties that people are living in. That's a bigger focus that I think than looking at let's get everybody in a warm house. I think the focus should be let's get them in a safe house first. And once they're safe, once they're free from all these fire risks and all the rest of it, we can then put a greater focus, because we can't do everything at once. If you're spending it on one thing, if you're spending that 16 billion on getting houses warmer, what about these people who are going to die if that house catches fire?
Well, you know, one way that's one way of warming yourself up. I mean, I remember in the 70s, the Welsh were rioting because so many English people were coming buying homes for the winter time, etc. And the advertising campaign, I remember, it was "Come home to a real fire, buy a house in Wales." So that's one way of keeping warm. Not one I would recommend. Thank you once again, Hamish McClave, for your sound advice, and Silas, stage words, sir. But I'd say to all of you out there are better times coming, he says with his optimistic hat on. This is my optimistic hat. Yeah, it's perfect. Let's keep our feet on the ground, reach for the stars, and hopefully look after our mental health. Please watch out. We've got plenty more this week. We've got IPSA Kind of Magic tomorrow, a highlight of the week for me, where I get to mingle with other IPSA members, which are excellent. The Association of Independent Personal Search Agents, of which Hamish is current chairman. On Thursday, we've got our lovely bun fight, property quorum. We get to talk about and toss around the matters of the day, not so acutely as we are here on property matters, but more in general terms, how it affects you, madam, you, sir. And also on Friday, of course, cladding matters, something that's been quoted in Australia and in the UK government. It's a great topic that we talk about. We talk about everything to do with building safety and specifically fire safety. But please do come along to that. And I look forward to seeing you all very soon. Thank you so much. Until then, bye-bye.